1980, a two-page spread in Rolling Stone magazine. On the left, a huge JBL speaker. On the right, a man in a Le Corbusier chair. Between them, a Maxell cassette. The man isn't just listening to music. He is literally blown away, his tie horizontal, hair pushed back. The sound is so powerful that it reshapes the space around him. This ad became one of the most recognizable images in marketing history. It's quoted in films, parodied by TV shows, copied by fashion magazines. 30 years later, anyone who grew up in the cassette era, upon hearing the word Maxell, sees exactly this image. But the story of Maxell is not just a story about great advertising. It's a story about how a company that started with batteries became one of the world's leading cassette manufacturers, won the format war, lost it, and found a way to keep existing in a world where cassettes have long been dead. Osaka, 1960. A large Japanese chemical company, Nitto Electric Industrial, decides to diversify its business. A new production line is launched, dry batteries, a product of everyday demand, a stable market, a clear technology. The name for the new division is chosen to be descriptive, Maxell, an abbreviation of maximum capacity dry cell, maximum capacity of a dry cell. No poetry, just function. The company knows what it sells. In 1961, the division becomes a separate company, Maxell Electric Industrial Co. Limited. Alongside batteries, a second direction is launched, magnetic tape. This is a logical step. The production of batteries and magnetic tape requires similar chemical expertise, an understanding of materials, and precise manufacturing control. The first Maxell magnetic tape is released in 1962. Reel-to-reel, for those who record music at home on tape recorders. The market is small but growing, and Maxell immediately bets on quality. Not the cheapest product, but the most precise one. This decision will determine everything that follows. Mid-1960s. Philips introduces the compact cassette, a standard that will change how the entire world listens to music. A small plastic box with two reels inside. Convenient, portable, sufficiently high quality for everyday use. For Maxell, this is the perfect moment. The company already knows how to make magnetic tape. It has the chemistry, the equipment, the understanding of how to achieve the required characteristics from the magnetic coating. In 1966, Maxell releases its first compact cassette for the Japanese market. At first under the Nitto brand, the parent company, but within the same year, the Maxell brand itself appears. An important detail, the first Maxell cassettes are made according to the same principles as professional studio tape. Not good enough for the consumer, but the maximum possible quality within the format. Late 1960s, early 1970s. The Japanese cassette market explodes. Alongside Maxell appear other serious players, TDK, Sony, Fuji. Each claims the title of the best cassette. A quiet war of quality begins. This war unfolds at the level of chemistry and physics, in magnetic coating formulas, in the size of iron oxide particles, in the precision of layer application, in the quality of the cassette mechanism. TDK bets on specially treated iron oxide, super-avalon. Maxell responds with its own developments, ultra-dynamic. These are not marketing words. Behind each name is real engineering work. Different formulations, different characteristics, different strengths. Audiophiles of that time fiercely argued about whose tape reproduced high frequencies more accurately, who have less noise, whose cassette stretched less with repeated use. In 1969, Maxell opens a representative office in the U.S. The American market is a different scale. Millions of buyers, massive distribution, but also tough competition with local brands and European manufacturers. Maxell enters not as a cheap Japanese alternative, but as a premium product. 1971, Maxell releases its first chromium dioxide cassette. This is a fundamentally new type of magnetic coating. Instead of iron oxide, chromium dioxide, CrO2. Chromium provides better sensitivity at high frequencies, a wider dynamic range, and lower noise. The trade-off is a higher bias level required during recording. Not every cheap tape recorder could handle it, but those who had decent equipment heard the difference immediately. Maxell's chrome cassette became the first step towards what will later be called a high-quality cassette, towards the understanding that the format can sound truly good, if made correctly. Late 1970s, Maxell launches the XLI line. This is a new generation chrome cassette with an improved coding formula, stricter quality control, and a cassette with precision guides. UDXLI, Ultra Dynamic Epitaxial Type 2, a cassette that in the audiophile community gained the status of a benchmark. Not because marketing says so, but because people recorded music on it in 1979, and 40 years later, those recordings still sound like new. On collector forums, discussions still go on. Which generation of XLI is better, the 1979, 1982, or 1985 release? Whose formula is more precise? Whose housing is more stable? Alongside XL2, the MX line is released, a metal cassette. Pure metal particles instead of oxides, even higher performance, even more demanding of equipment, even more expensive. But while Maxell's engineers were working on coding formulas, the marketers were doing something no less important. 1979. The advertising agency Scully, McCabe, Sloves gets a commission from Maxell's American division. The task is to create an ad for a market already saturated with competitors. TDK, Sony, BASF, all of them are advertising. They need something memorable. Art director Lars Anderson proposes an idea. Don't talk about technical specifications. Show sound physically. Visualize what happens when a truly high-quality cassette plays through truly high-quality speakers. Photographer Steve Steigman shoots it in 2 hours in a New York studio. A Le Corbusier LC2 chair, a JBL L100 speaker, a man in a tie. A fan creates a stream of air, the tie blown horizontally, hair pushed back, the lamp bends, a glass slides. One frame. In 1980, the spread appears in Rolling Stone. The reaction is immediate. People tear the page out and hang it on their walls. The Blown Away Guy poster becomes a collectible even before it is officially sold. In 1981, the ad airs on television. To Wagner's Ride of the Valkyries, the same image comes to life in a 30-second spot. The company doesn't explain the tape's technical characteristics. It simply shows this is what happens when sound is real. The ad is referenced in The Simpsons. It is recreated by a fashion magazine. 20 years after its first publication, the image is still alive, not as nostalgia, but as a cultural code. In the United Kingdom, the story of the ad took a completely different path. 1982. The agency Downton Advertising is tasked with adapting The Blown Away Guy to a British audience. But instead of adapting it, they create something entirely new. The main role, the man who inserts the cassette and experiences the sonic storm, is played by Peter Murphy, the vocalist of Bauhaus, one of the key faces of post-punk and the Gothic subculture. The ad is called Storm. Murphy inserts the cassette. The room explodes. not with the cheerful sonic wind of the American version, but with a real storm with greenish light. Final slogan: break the sound barrier. This ad is not just another version of the American one, it is a different genre. The American version says music is beautiful and powerful. The British version says music is dangerous and unstoppable. Both images are about the same cassette, just for different audiences. The 80s. Maxell's golden age. Maxell sells cassettes all over the world. XL2 sits on store shelves from Tokyo to Los Angeles, next to TDK and Sony, but in no way below them. The three brands share the high-quality cassette market roughly equally, and audiophiles fiercely argue about which is better. It's a conversation that continues to this day on specialized forums. Tapeheads.net, Vinyl Engine, hundreds of pages of discussions about which generation of XL2 sounds more accurate. After 1994, Maxell began cutting costs in production. The cassettes became slightly thinner, slightly less stable. Not catastrophically, but those who knew the XL2 of the 80s could hear the difference. At the same time, Maxell expands its lineup. In addition to XL2 and MX, the following appear: UD, Ultra Dynamic, a more affordable ferric cassette; XL2S, an improved version of XL2 with more carefully selected particles and enhanced performance; MXS, top-class metal, limited runs, almost manual quality control; Vertex, the highest-end metal cassette of Maxell's later period; VHS. You can't tell the story of Maxell in the 80s without video cassettes. When home VCRs began conquering the market, first in Japan, then in Europe and the USA, Maxell entered this market with the same philosophy as in audio. Not cheaper than competitors, better quality. The HGX Gold series, Maxell's top-tier video cassettes, were positioned as a professional standard for home use. Improved magnetic coating, better resolution, stability under repeated use. For families recording weddings, children's parties, and important TV broadcasts, this mattered. The tape that holds memories must be reliable. Maxell HGX Gold became the standard for those who understood the difference. The 90s. The world is changing. CDs are taking over the market, not immediately. In 1990, cassettes still outsold compact discs, but with each year, the gap narrows. By the middle of the decade, the balance shifts. Maxell reacts the same way as TDK and all other cassette manufacturers. It starts producing CDRs, then DVDRs, then flash drives, optical discs, each time following the market, trying to transfer its reputation for quality media to a new format. In 2008, Maxell made a decision that many saw as an admission of defeat, outsourcing the production of optical media to the Taiwanese company Rytec. Maxell no longer makes CDRs and DVDRs itself. It only licenses the name. It's the same story that happened with dozens of other brands. The trademark remains, the production leaves. But Maxell did something important that many competitors didn't. While the media business was dying, the company quietly built another business. Batteries, the very first product it started with back in 1960. Maxell never abandoned the battery business, and by the 2000s, it had become the foundation. Lithium batteries for electronic devices, specialized cells for medical equipment, watch batteries. Projectors. After leaving the consumer media market, Maxell focused on projectors for schools, conference rooms, lecture halls. Not the most glamorous market, but stable and with a real need for reliable products. Wireless charging, functional materials for electronics, industrial solutions. In 2017, another important event took place. Maxell fully separated from Hitachi, which had owned it since the 1970s, and became a completely independent company. A new beginning with a new focus. In 2023, Maxell announced the return of cassette sales of the UR line, the most basic ferric cassette outside Japan, through Amazon and other online platforms. This is not a nostalgic gesture, it's a response to a real market signal. The cassette renaissance is not a journalistic myth. Sales of new cassettes in the U.S. in 2023 exceeded 1.5 million units. That's dozens of times less than the peak in the 80s, but it's a real, growing market. Musicians release albums on cassette. Collectors hunt for old recordings. Young people are discovering the tactile nature of analog media, that feeling of holding it in your hands, flipping it over, pressing play. For Maxell, it's a small business, but symbolically important. Maxell is a story about a company that created one of the greatest advertisements in history, that made cassettes so well that even 40 years later, people still argue about which year was the best, that survived the disappearance of its main product and found a way to remain. Maybe you had cassettes like these too, or maybe you still listen to music recorded on them. Share in the comments.